Welcome back to the Unbiased Opinion, where everyone's opinion is biased except ours. I'm Daniel.
I'm Craig.
And as we said last week, and as we covered the first two movies, but we are continuing our Star Trek the Original Series movies. This week we will be covering the next two, uh, starting with Star Trek 3, The Search for Spock. So before we discuss the film, Craig, you want to give a brief plot?
Yes, so picking up after the second movie with the whole Genesis and Spock dying, they return to some starbase. They learn that, Spock's not fully dead. They have to get his Katra and get a hold of his body, so they have to go back to the Genesis planet. With the Genesis planet, some Klingons discover about the Genesis device. Savick and David Marcus are there studying the Genesis planet. And so they destroyed the science vessel. Uh, the guy gets to try to hook up the Genesis device. David Marcus dies. Kirk and his crew gets there. They defeat the Klingons and save Spock's body and reunite him with his Katra, his living spirit, because it was in McCoy when he said "remember" at the end of the second one. That's
Yes.
about it. A bit of scatterbrained, but yeah, that's about it.
Yeah. And also, yeah, and on top of that too, like the Genesis planet was rapidly dying because David used the proto matter
I, I
instead.
I don't think that's a real thing, but let's just go with it.
It sounds scientific enough, but yeah, Craig, what did you think of the search for Spock?
I thought it was okay. It felt more like a tie-in comic than a movie, but which it's kind of doesn't sound as good, but that's why it's just okay. It's not the worst thing in the world, but it's just okay. What did you think?
I can see it. I personally enjoyed this one. I thought it was more fun. Um, which I guess can be one of the downsides of this because the tone can sometimes feel a bit scattered in this film. But the reason this one holds a special place in my heart is because this was one of the first ones I saw when I was younger, when I first got introduced to Star Trek, and I really enjoyed it as a kid. Um, so rewatching it, I I still very much do enjoy this one. Not as strong as Wrath of Khan, which I think it's on. I think this one gets maybe um, following up to that. It kind of sets itself up to be okay. Um,
I think you're gonna say
considering
it's like the
that,
most forgotten, which I can agree with that too.
yeah.
Because no, it's not the
Uh,
first one. It's not as good as the second or the sixth, or even the fourth to an extent. The fifth one is
yeah,
so bad that everyone kind of talks about it. And this one was just good enough where it didn't stand out, but it wasn't bad enough to be mocked. So it's just kind of there.
yeah. But I still enjoy it for what it is. The plot is very simple. Um, but the reason I like this one, and not to go too much into the fourth one, but I really enjoy the fourth one too, um, is this one I like that they kind of utilize the entire crew. Um, Especially my favorite scene in this is when they steal the Enterprise right from the space station. Um, and everyone because everyone has an important part in doing it, and everyone executes, and it's just like you know it was just nice to see the whole crew working together on it. But before go too far into that, what were the positives about this film for you?
Well, definitely stuff like that, like seeing the crew work together. I love the line when McCoy finds out that he has this contract. He goes, "That's for other arguments he lost. This is his revenge."
Yeah, I always love that one. um,
It's really
it
just like the
was fun.
crew, like
Yeah,
yeah, Kirk
yeah,
and the crew. That's to me really the strong stuff because like what's his name, Crudge, and the Klingons. They're just kind of there. They're, I guess, the bad guys that kind of make the movie come along.
Yeah, that's kind of that was probably the weakest part. I guess that's probably when, like, I saw like the reviews on it. Generally, they were positive. Obviously, it was not as well received following Wrath of Khan, but one of the complaints was like kind of the plot. Excuse me. And I think that's a big part of it is the villains, like the antagonists in this, kind of lacked. Like the Klingons and the Federation are at a point where they have a treaty, and stuff, and there's no real motivation for Krug to be going for the Genesis um,
Well, that and it's like it's kind of
device,
reusing a bit of the plot points from the previous movie where
Wrath
they
of Khan.
wanted, yeah, as like a weapon. Man, we kind of did that already in the last movie.
Yeah, and that was fine. Khan wanting a weapon, to possibly create a new world for his people, or become a tyrant with it again. But it also that's fine because it takes a backseat in his motivation because his real mission is to go after Kirk, and there's a built-in backstory, so that's fine and it fits. There's no backstory with Krug. There's really no
Is it Crudge or Krug? I thought it was Crudge.
Crudge. We'll call him Crudge. Sounds more Klingon. Um, so there's really no reason for him to be going for the Genesis device, especially too when it's like there was only one model of it. I know they want to like duplicate it, but there's no proper motivation for them to want to duplicate, especially given like the situation between their governments. Like he doesn't he doesn't say like he wants to like get them out of the treaty with the Federation. He just wants to like get this weapon and that's it. So I think that's where the problem lies in like there's no real motivation for the villain in this. And he's just there. It's just more Klingon hatred from Kirk, um, which stems back to the original series. If anyone really watched it, Kirk is pretty prejudiced against the Klingons. He doesn't like them at all.
But again,
Um,
that fit the time because they were like the analog for the Soviet Union, so it made sense. I can't
yeah,
imagine your average true patriot would have been too fond of the Soviets
yeah,
that time period, but that's
but
besides the point.
yeah, I get that. That was kind of weaker. I mean, I'll give Christopher Lloyd props. I think he did a good job with the role that he was given. He definitely went all out. It's just there wasn't much for them to do, and that was the problem. Like honestly, you probably didn't even need. You probably could have just based the entire film on them struggling to get Spock back. You could have made that a greater factor.
That's what I was
Like
thinking of
they,
too, because like again, the Klingons don't really add anything to it. I mean, it's
yeah.
really just they're really more for there for plot reason. Like you need something to kind of like press, making it more difficult to get Spock back.
But the thing is like you don't need that when it's already been set that it's a race against time because the planet has hours left, and Spock is gonna die with the planet. Also, like Bones, if he doesn't get Spock's spirit out of him, like it's gonna like basically like cause him to go to Madison, like eventually die. So there's already like elements in the story that have enough precedence and enough of emergency for the crew to like have to race to take care of this, then you don't need the Klingons there
Yeah,
at
because you
all.
could have had like I said, the planets, falling apart. You could have had like, oh, atmosphere is messing stuff up, the electromagnetic field of the planet, whatever. That's why we can't beam down and get them. We could try to
Yeah,
send a ship, but like it's not as easy or whatever. Or they said it was a science vessel, right? So like maybe they don't have
yeah, the Grissom, I think.
yeah, maybe they don't have like I'm forgetting the forgetting the name of it, but like the ships they would use to land on the surface. Like and
Shuttlecrafts,
yeah, yeah.
yeah,
They don't have any shuttlecrafts on a science vessel. That's why they can't actually go down and get them.
yeah. Yeah, so you didn't need the antagonist in this, especially considering like you kind of set yourself up to have any antagonist after Khan to kind of just be disappointing compared to it. Um, so that was definitely weak, like the weaker part of it, and or maybe they could have introduced a different, maybe not the Klingons, maybe another. You just did a movie with an old face. Bring in another like race, or something like that. But or just don't have any there. I think would have been sufficient enough.
So plus, like again, like retreading old ground, where like they didn't really touch upon like the ethics of the device, but still, like people want to use it for a super weapon. I mean, again, to kind of touch upon that the last movie, it's just retreading old ground, which you don't really need to. Like it kind of served its purpose in the second one. This year is more of
Yeah,
just like the aftermath, and I guess realizing it's not a good idea.
yeah. But yeah, that was like the weaker point, like of the film, and like um, but I guess we also have to give a bit of background on the film too. Um, this was the first of two films directed by Leonard Nimoy. Um, he did this one in the fourth, um, which I think he did a good job. But and then also Savick had a bit of a change. I think that they couldn't. There was something. There was like a they. There was disagreements over the salary or contract, so they kicked Kirstie Alley aside and they brought in this lady. I don't even know her name. They brought back David.
Robin Curtis.
Um, yeah,
I got a Wikipedia open.
um, yeah. So, um, but and also too, I don't think I don't like. I get David being there. I think it would have been fine, but they also like. I think it would have been a better his character being there would have been better had they actually maybe given him and Kirk time together to kind of like form the relationship because after Wrath of Khan, David comes to respect Kirk for who he is um, and all that, and they kind of come to this understanding at the end of it. They go their separate ways, or in their careers. But I think it would have been a good um, point if you brought David back and like he tried to take the shortcut with the proto matter, kind of like almost imitating Kirk with the Kobayashi Maru, kind of taking the shortcut in a way. Um, and I think maybe you could have like done a little more like interpersonal, like a touching scene there, like where he does that and Kirk can then kind of give him fatherly advice or something like that. I don't think you need to kill him.
Well, especially the way he died too. That's the thing that kind of like bothered me too. Like it's not even like again, I guess it's more of a quote unquote realistic death, but like he basically just gets like stabbed and dies like a punk. I mean, he was trying to be brave. He was trying to save Savick and Spock, sort of, but like it just was like so, like wow, that's it. He's dead.
Yeah, he kind of died like a side character, like one
Oh,
of the ensigns in the original series, like
yeah, like the red
the
shirt people, like the security
yeah
guys.
the human the human fodder.
I was almost expecting like Bones to come over. He's dead, Jim.
Bones just walks onto the scene, he's dead, and then just walks back onto the ship.
Like
But
I said, again, probably, more realistic, people probably die in much less dramatic ways, but just for a movie, it's just like, wow, that's it. Especially for Kirk's son, like,
yeah, especially how they ended it in the second one. Like there was going to be more to this. Like he finally, him and his, they never had the relationship. This might have been a movie where they can finally form a relationship, and it's just like he has a few dialogues with him over the over the intercom, and then his son dies. And then that's it. And then it's
like you knew
like,
son for what, like only a few hours, if you like,
yeah,
consider like time that we've seen the movies.
yeah, and it kind of his death also kind of gets undermined too, especially with how they end it because they bring Spock back, right? So like Spock had died, and his body in that casket that was on the planet, the radiation or whatever kind of regenerated his cells. So Spock, his body is aging with the planet. So when they first find him on the planet, he's this little boy in the snow, which he probably would have just frozen to death. Um, but
Well, especially
and
since
then
I think Vulcans, I think they're more vulnerable to the cold because they are in a desert planet.
yeah, um, why would the kid wander into the Arctic? Like, why would you go to the tundra?
I think you're just feral. I mean, imagine like you're rapidly aging with no social development.
Yeah. Um, and they say Vulcans are smart and logical, but um, so they find him, and then a few hours later, he's like, late teens, early 20s. Um, and then, but the point of that is, I'm getting to is that so they, Kirk kills Krug, which probably has one of the best finishing lines by Shatner. Kicks him. I have had enough of you. Um, and I also liked Shatner when they got back on the Warbird and they took it over, and then like the Klingon, the one Kirk has him at gunpoint. He's like, "Help us or die." And the Klingon's like, "I don't deserve to live," and then Kirk just goes, "All right, fine, I'll kill you later," and then just keeps moving. Like,
No, then
so yeah, I love
after that, he's
Shatner.
like, "You said you're gonna kill me." I lied.
Yeah, but so the whole thing is like his son's death. Okay, fine, but the thing is, it kind of gets brushed to the rug because then they bring Spock back and everything's okay.
Well, Kirk's real love is revived, not his son.
Yeah, yeah. So
Like that's why I
in
feel
that
like if
way,
maybe
it was
they,
completely unnecessary.
yeah, 'cause maybe if they had kept they brought David and Carol Marcus back, and Carol could have died. Because I feel like with Carol, there's really nothing there for her much to do, like character wise for anybody. Like David's a grown up, her and Kirk, gone their separate ways. At least Kirk can try to develop that relationship with the son. That I don't know.
Yeah, yeah.
If we never see
I
him again,
think
at least he's alive.
yeah. It's just if you it just his son dying was like really just unnecessary because it didn't like serve a purpose because it's like Kirk loses his son, he beats Krug, and then he gets Spock back, and it's like that's the end of it.
He doesn't really care
Like
about his son anymore.
yeah, because then going into the next one, it just disregards it like it never happened. So it's just you know it's fine if you want to kill him, but then appreciate it. Like take the time to then appreciate like his son actually died. It's like his son dies. Kirk like he falls back on his chair. He has that minute of sadness, and then it's like, all right, on
Back
to
to
on to the
work.
next plan. Which that was sad to see. Kirk blow up the Enterprise.
What have I
Um,
done?
what have I done, Bones? But it also was I think it was a cool moment too because Kirk also would and I know in the original series too he said it like blow he would rather blow the ship up than give it over to an enemy
Oh
or
yeah,
if he yeah so he would it was a good Kirk moment because he stayed true to that. He would rather die and the ship die than it be especially be in the hands of a Klingon knowing Kirk. um
but unfortunately,
but
as good as that sequence was, it of course gets copied constantly by our boy Kurtzman and J.J. Abrams, and they
wasn't
don't seem
that
to understand the
line
importance of it.
because wasn't that line in one of the new Star Treks like verbatim?
I don't remember if the line was, but I know in Into Darkness and Beyond, they both had the ship basically get destroyed.
Yeah.
Which again is just you're kind of missing the point of like you can't have the ship be destroyed every movie, like otherwise it's not special.
but
Even
and
TNG did
also
that,
but at least in this sense it was done as a strategic move
and it was the
because
first time too. It wasn't like you can't claim like in later on in the franchise. Like now they're just doing it because it's dramatic. People loved it in this one or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah, because in Beyond they just abandoned ship because they were just outgunned. Like the ship was going down, so he just told them to just you got to get off. And then Into Darkness, it was again because they got crippled by a superior ship. This it was like it was to save the crew and move. Like so he destroyed it to outsmart his opponent. It wasn't, oh, we just got outgunned by a bigger and badder ship.
And what was it?
But again, like you said, it's the first time, so I definitely I can only imagine like fans seeing that happen, like because it was 20 years. I think it like this one came out what in 85, right?
84. Yes,
Yeah, so
almost 20 years.
almost 20 years of seeing the Enterprise and stuff. It must have been somewhat emotional, um, especially too because it was kind of on its like it was about to be like decommissioned and everything. There's a new ship and stuff, so that was a cool scene. And that's why like for this movie, it was like you said, it kind of gets forgotten, but I personally because again, it's the crew and like moments like that that save that that make the movie enjoyable.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Like those are the good scenes that I like. But then you get like the Klingon scenes. It's like, oh god.
Yeah, how the Klingons, just a little side tangent, how the Klingons ever got into space is beyond me. I know they're fictional characters, but my God, they like especially when you look at the other series as well. It's like other races advanced, even within the trajectory of those shows. Other races advanced, but not the Klingons. Like how the Klingons are like feared is beyond me.
Well,
Like
the other bad guys because he shoots somebody for missing a shot. They just vaporized him.
oh no, not because he missed the shot, but because he blew up the ship and he didn't take prisoners. I did think that was funny. That scene. He's like, I wanted prisoners. Sorry, lucky shot. I guess just shot him.
Oh, yeah, I love because it's like it's so stupid. Like these supposed to be like I know they're villains, but like my God, it's like they're so incompetent. You can't be killing your crew like that.
Yeah, I guess that you might. That is maybe one negative out of these movies is they started this generation of Klingons because in the original series the Klingons were not like this at all. They were just more like you said, they were like the Soviet Union, like, or at least like what the general stereotype of the Soviet Union was. Like they're very cold, they're militarized, and they're conquering and expanding their power because they can and they want to dominate. But they weren't stupid about it. Like this, it's just like they're like bloodlusted warriors, and you wonder did the Klingons devolve while everyone else evolved?
Well, I would say like this wasn't them at their worst. It definitely got worse in TNG. That's when
But
it's
I
like, oh
think
my God.
yeah, it sparked this like started that new generation of Klingons that it just it, like I just don't like I'm like how like what happened
Because there was
like
like a TNG episode. I know you haven't seen that show, but there was an episode where they had like a female engineer, and she was like so reserved and so like scared because like apparently she was like would get like verbally abused for being an engineer or a scientist, whatever she was. And it's like, why? They're the ones that build your ships and your weapons. Shouldn't you have some respect for them? Like, oh, I chose to be an engineer. It's basically a life like constant humiliation, verbal assault. Oh
uh,
well, that's really stupid.
I also find it funny too. It's like these Klingons like want to like value like I don't know. It's I guess that's like one negative out of these entire movies is they started that generation of Klingons. It was like a ripple effect because they also in Deep Space Nine they didn't get better either.
I mean, I would say it only got better because they had Martok, who was better than Worf. I don't know if that's a hot take, but
Well,
Barely better.
more Mr. Stoic.
Mhm. This isn't
Yeah,
about Deep Space Nine, though.
yeah, no, no. But um, yeah, yeah, I did enjoy as dumb as the Klingons were, especially the scene where um Krug decides to send his entire crew onto the Enterprise.
I mean,
Especially when like Kirk and them were surrendering, I get the move, but you also I would probably you send like half your force. You don't send everyone.
yeah, because like you send everybody, how are you gonna like keep your threat with your guns on the ship pointed to their ship?
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like, I mean, it's just with the Klingons, man. I know what I understand Kirk's hatred for them. I do. They're stupid.
Well, I think you hate them for a
But
very different reason.
yeah, yeah, but yeah. So and then Kirk, because even again too, like I liked Christopher Lloyd's performance. He was all in for it, but because even like again, like he's like he has like when he captures them, he captures the crew on Genesis, and it's clearly falling apart. It's like he still is like, I want Genesis. It's like, dude, look around. Like, there is nothing here for you. You lost your crew and everything. It's like, but he still's like talking about Genesis. It's like, what is there left for you?
Like, buddy, take a hint.
I know. So, yeah, I that's where like that. I guess that's like the biggest negative for this. I guess also too in like I was gonna say tone. Like, while I did like the more fun part of it, like the crew coming together, like Bones, that scene where Bones has his moments of like where Spock is coming through him, and then Bones comes back out, like where he's at the bar and he tries to like Vulcan neck grab the guy. Like I just looks at him like, what are you doing?
Well, I like that scene too, where like Bones was telling, "Oh, I need to go to the Genesis planet," and it's like, "Doctor, at least you're talking about this. So why do you think I'm trying to get a hire a ship to get out of here?"
Yeah. Um like so those scenes were fun, and then like I said, I love the this is my favorite scene was when they stole the Enterprise, and like I did like too like that one captain who's like the captain of the Excelsior. He's like, he's in his bed and he's like all arrogant about the how the Excelsior is and it's trans warp, but he's in his chair. And like the guy messages him over comments like, "Commander, we gotta go yellow alert." He goes, "Yellow alert on a space station? What are you talking about?" He goes, "Someone's trying to steal the Enterprise." And then I always love Scotty's pride in the Enterprise too. Like even though the Enterprise is like getting decommissioned and like it's on its like last limbs, he still has so much pride for it. Like when they put him on the Excelsior and like his part is like he stole like those parts from it, and like he's leaving the ship or he's going to the transporter room, and the one guy walks in, he's, "Oh, calling it a night, Scotty." He's like, "Yes, sir." He goes, "Yeah, I can't wait to take it out tomorrow and break all the Enterprise's speed records."
Kill
And
them
then
all on the inside.
yeah, and then Spock as he gets Scotty as he gets in the elevator, he's just like, "Up your shaft." Like, I love his pride in the Enterprise, but and then he when he gets on the ship, he like hands the bolts to like Bones. He goes, from one surgeon to another, like um,
Okay, it's
so
like
like
those are
that
like
that
the parts that are fun that I like about the movie. And
yeah,
then again, you get the. Is this? I think this is the shortest one too,
might have been.
because it clocks in like just like 100 minutes or so. Because again, I guess that's my point where it feels like some tie-in comic. Because again, it's really short. It's really the Klingons don't really serve much of a purpose. The really goal is just to get Spock back.
Yeah,
They get him back. Like the story isn't, I guess, to me, deep enough to really warrant like a movie.
yeah, and that's where I think like the tone kind of conflicts because it's like it has this lighthearted, like, so it goes from the beginning of the movie. It's like there's that an emotional scene between Sarek and Spot and Kirk,
Another great
where
scene.
like, yeah, that I always do like when Sarek comes back. He's one of my favorite, recurring characters in the original series. So it was cool to see him again, and like he actually got emotional too because he's yelling at Kirk, thinking that he betrayed Spock and not returning his body to Vulcan and stuff. But then he does the mind meld with him to get Kirk's memories, and yeah, he starts repeating Spock, and like you see Kirk is like Spock. Um, so that was a great scene. Um, and then it goes into like, and then the tone kind of like it then transitions over to like the fun heist part, and then they go to Genesis, and it's like his son gets killed and all this tense stuff. So I get that complaint because that was one of the things is like one of the complaints on the film was like the tone was kind of out of whack, which I can see that. Um, and I honestly, they could have kept maybe a more serious tone. As much as I enjoyed the stealing the Enterprise, um, maybe they could have kept him, especially after they figured out like McCoy had Spock's spirit in him. Like maybe they could have kept that more of throughout, and it's like this emotional journey to get him back, and everything. But because especially at the ending, like when they did get Spock back, that was a great scene. Um, that was one of my favorite Shatner moments. Um, when Spock finally like starts to like his memories start to come in, and he's like, Jim, your name is Jim. Yes, yes, Spock. The ship out of danger. You saved. You saved the ship. You saved us all.
I
So
love Kirk.
like you gotta love, yeah, you gotta love the Shatnerian acting. There's such a charm to it. I know it can be over the top, but I think also too, if I'm not mistaken, Shatner kind of came from a theater background, so it's kind of more of that like Shakespearean, like you got to be a little more extravagant with your emotions and stuff. So I get it, but it's also a charm, and you just gotta love it. Um, but
I was gonna say
yeah,
this too. So like for why everyone wanted to save Spock, like I get why Bones and I get why Kirk would save Spock. They're basically each other's best friends. But like for the rest of the crew, we don't really see their relationship. Not that it matters too much; it doesn't really affect the enjoyment of the movie. But it's like why would they care so much to like risk their entire careers for Spock?
yeah, I don't know.
Again, not a big deal. It doesn't affect the film at all. But just like for someone like Sulu, who I'm not sure like ever really talks to Spock, except maybe Spock like berate him or like make him
You're
feel
like, yeah,
stupid.
yeah. Spock gives him coordinates when he's at the helm.
Yeah, because like even Scotty, I can they these kind of work together. Scotty was third in command behind Spock, so there's he's a senior officer. Worked together for a long time. Like the other guys, like I don't know. Again, because we know about Kirk, Bones, and Spock's relationship in the original series and the other two movies. Like we
Yeah,
know how close those guys were. They were always on the missions together.
yeah. Um, no, yeah. I guess it was to show, I guess, the loyalty of just the crew,
Yeah, again,
which,
not a big deal. Like anyone who thinks that's
yeah,
like a huge, it's not really a criticism, more of just like a
yeah,
nitpick.
yeah. Because I mean, yeah, that I get that, but I guess it was to like that cool moment where Kirk is like, gentlemen, I can't ask any of you to come on this with me, and none of them hesitate. Like, oh, what are the coordinates? So yeah, logically, you're like, why are they?
Yeah, because again, do the pros really
Scotty's
outweigh the
just,
cons?
let's be honest, Scotty's just doing it to get back on the Enterprise. That dude would,
That's probably true.
he doesn't care. It could have been a suicide mission into the sun, and Scotty will go down with the ship.
It's funny you mentioned that. I mean, a bit of a tangent, but there was a TNG episode where Scotty got trapped by a Dyson sphere. He got trapped in the transporter, and he like got like was living in the transport for like 100 or not 100, but, like many decades until the Enterprise D crew found him. So he was almost trapped by his son.
Scotty. Um, but yeah, I mean, it. So like this film, like again, I guess it doesn't help it comes out right behind Wrath of Khan because I guess like this plot. Like if you wanted to include the Klingon struggle, antagonist, I think it's better, especially with the motivation and everything or the lack thereof. I think it would have fit better, maybe like a gap in between, or it comes out a bit later. But following Wrath of Khan, it kind of has a very similar formula, with the exception of getting Spock back, kind of weakens it. Um, but it's
I just
still,
don't think you need like a physical villain. I feel like the Genesis
yeah,
planet could have been enough of an obstacle.
yeah,
Because like if you're going for
yeah,
something like, maybe going on faith and friendship, overcoming, something like the Genesis planet,
yeah.
actually doing something laborious as opposed to just kind of showing up there, beating up a Klingon, then going home.
Yeah, because then they could also, because then what they could have done, and I think it would have served better in like a more Star Trek fashion, is like, okay, we got the Enterprise. They get to the Genesis. Um, the maybe the Grissom, something happened. The Grissom got pulled and crash landed. So now the crew has to split up. So Kirk, Bones, and like Chekhov, they have to go find Spock and um, Sa- uh, what am I for Savick and David, and then the rest of the crew they have to go get they have to go rescue the Grissom crew. So like that could have been majority of your movie. It was like, all right, they get to the planet, they have the race against time, they got to get Spock, but now they also have to save this other crew, and then it all works out. They get back to Vulcan, or they're able to start the other ship up, so then David and Savick can go back with them, and then they head back. They head to Vulcan. I think that would have been a much better plot. It's more of a race against time rather than race against time and needless Klingons in it.
Also, too, like they don't know it's a race against time. Like the Enterprise crew, they just show up there and
Yeah.
realize, like, oh my god, what's going on?
Well, and that's what I mean. Like they like by the time they get to David and Savick and Spock, it's like, we got an hour. We got to get off. Like so all of a sudden it's like, oh crap. So now it's a race to get back. You know, like that. I think that would have been better. Um,
Yeah, I
Instead
agree.
of you know, so this movie has its flaws. Like overall, like I probably rank this movie higher than it should. Like I like it. Like I think it's like it's more of a personal one of my like I personally just enjoy it. Um, uh, then like overall, then as a sound movie, like how it actually is written in the plot. Um, so like it's I think it's a good movie. It definitely could have been better. It's following Wrath of Khan, it's a bit underwhelming. I guess what saves it is the crew, and then they get Spock back, and the ending of it definitely puts a nice bow on
No
it.
one's ever really gone. Well, at least in this sense, it wasn't like he actually got revived. It was more of Genesis kind of cloned his body, but whatever. Go back to
Yeah,
your more important stuff.
yeah. But final, those are my final thoughts on the film. Overall, enjoyable, entertaining movie. Could have been better, but I still enjoy it for what it was.
Yeah, I'm along the same page. I mean, again, a mixed bag, more good than bad, but
Yeah,
kind of like sandwich between two good movies. Probably again, like we said, the most forgotten. Not
yeah,
entirely its fault. Just nothing really stands out too much compared to the other
definitely.
six movies or five.
Yeah, as you're saying, sandwich between good movies. Speaking of which, brings up Star Trek 4, The Voyage Home, which I don't. It's hard to say. It's definitely the most fun Star Trek movie.
Yeah,
But
the most comedic.
I I love it for that reason. Like this might be tied for my number one. I love it so much. But before we get into that, want to give a brief plot on it, Craig?
Yes, so the Enterprise. So there's a just some probe is coming to Earth, sending out a signal. They don't know what it is, and at the same time, Kirk and his crew have been on Vulcan, I guess in some kind of political asylum for like 3 months. I think that the movie said they're about to return to Earth to probably face a court martial and trial. They get to Earth, they realize that probe is like destroying the planet, and they figure out, okay, you need to get some humpback whales, which are extinct. So you have to go back in time to get the whales. They land in 1986 Earth. Gotta find the whales, gotta repair the ship, and gotta get home to save Earth.
Yeah,
Yep.
it definitely. Yeah. So, like I said, this might be my personal favorite. I love it. It reminded me of like in the original series, like where they had those fun episodes in between. Like when they like when they go back, they go to the one planet, and the planet is based off of 1920s like mobsters. I love those. I love those kinds of episodes. 'Cause it's a nice break. They're nice, fillers. It's a different side of the crew, and stuff, and it's not, world-ending threat. It's still, there's a serious situation, but it allows the crew to have more fun and more comedy um, in it. So yeah, um, I don't really have any like negatives. I think I only have like positives because I love this one um, for that.
I mean, if you want
But
to say my one negative first,
yeah,
I mean, again, this is more of like a nitpick. Not that anyone really cares, but I don't really feel like going to 1986 was the best year they could have chosen because, like, 5 years, or I guess 10 years later, the eugenics wars start, right? Like, I don't think Earth would be like
yeah,
exactly how it was, right?
yeah,
Especially when you're following up the Wrath of Khan, kind of, further reinforcing like the alternate history and the eugenics wars that's coming up. Maybe not the best time to go to Earth, but it doesn't really affect the movie in any way. This is more of just
yeah,
me complaining
yeah,
because it
yeah.
is something that occurred to me when I first saw. I was like, this really shouldn't be. Is this how Earth should be right before the eugenics wars? But
Yeah, and maybe they could have done. Maybe they could have gone like a decade before because, or
I feel like
um,
1966 would have been perfect. That's the year the first Star Trek came out.
yeah, and also too then because you're in the heart of like the Cold War, and then having Chekhov.
Where is the nuclear vessel?
But I don't know. Did Star Trek? Did they really? They didn't really touch on like the Cold War in any of theirs. I mean, they did. I mean, because I'm just trying to think because there's a bit of an alternate history. I know because they did have the Nazis as part of Earth's history. So I guess
I mean, my crude understanding is that I guess their alternate history started in like 1966 when the show came out, and from there on they were just guessing where things would go.
yeah,
That's what they when they wrote the show, like 30 years later. There's the eugenics wars.
yeah. Um, so yeah, by the time the show came out, they had to have like in history, like in their lore somewhere, the Cold War had to have been there.
Yeah, maybe it ended. Who knows how that led into the eugenics wars or whatever.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, there's probably
But
like other material for it, but I'm not gonna look it up.
yeah,
It's not
yeah.
important.
Yeah, but this film is also again directed by Leonard Nimoy. Um, Definitely the better. I think the better of the two he directed. Not saying he did a bad job with the third, but this one is just I think is just a better movie. Because not only do I like it for its comedy and its fun tone and the fish out of water, which is ironic because they're fish out of water on their own planet. Um, but that's that. But that unlike Endgame, they actually utilize time travel correctly. Um, but um, yeah, and
Well,
but also too the plot for it, the pacing for it, and the writing for it too is just it's all just pretty sound.
I mean, to tie it back to our previous movie, this movie doesn't really have a villain for the most part. Like, so an antagonist driving the plot. It's really more like a race against time, like we were saying. Maybe they should have done the third one.
Yeah,
Because then,
and
it's like, well,
because
we got to quickly, the whales are going to be gone, so we got to quickly get the whales back before we lose them.
yeah, and that was the cool thing about the original series because in the show it wasn't always a lot of episodes. I guess the closest episode for this one is um not closest episode, but like the one I thought of too is like um the one where there was like that giant like cube and like so like
Yeah.
the point I'm making is like a lot of times like in the episodes it's not that they were going up against an enemy, it was like they went up against this force of nature or some
Something they didn't
device.
understand,
Yeah, and so it's like a race against time, and they got to figure it out. So like it was that, but in a much more lighter tone to it. Um, but yeah, I mean, all right. So yeah, I just that I enjoy the movie just overall from like all standpoints. Um, and also too, I thought it was clever is like, and that's where I think like that's why like I enjoy Search for Spock because it kind of like with the light tone of like the crew working together fully, everyone being like fully utilized in the usefully used in the plot, having something to do, and the crew's having fun doing it, like so they kind of got at that in like the Enterprise scene, but this movie kind of just took that and ran with it.
Yeah, because I think this is definitely the most useful the entire crew is, and the most
Yeah,
utilized as well.
and that's also a big reason I like it too, is because everyone has something to do in it. It's not just Kirk, Spock, and Bones on a planet, and the rest of the crew's on the ship waiting for
And
them
maybe
to
Scotty.
beam aboard. Yeah, and like yeah, Scotty's at the in the chair just waiting for that to beam them aboard. Um,
Or what was that one episode where Scotty was in the chair and he like I think Kirk told him was an order something, and Scotty was gonna like basically glass the planet if they didn't let Kirk go.
oh, that was the Adonis episode, right?
No, there was a different episode where they got caught in between like I think two planets virtual war, and
Oh yeah, the computer war one.
yeah,
Yeah.
and they got their deaths were simulated and they were basically gonna kill them, and Kirk's like, absolutely not, you're not gonna kill me. And he like told Scotty like, I'll glass this planet if you don't let me go.
Oh yeah, Kirk basically forced them with the threat of actual war to get them out of their virtual war.
He destroyed their computer.
um, but yeah, I like with the plot. I thought it was an interesting like twist. Like it was an interesting element to they have to go back in time to get humpback whales. Like I thought that was clever. I obviously there's the undertone of like environmental conservation, specifically whaling, and like the importance of like all life on Earth. But it doesn't like make statements like that. There isn't like a moment where it's like, oh, we have to. It's more of like carried out in the whale lady. What's her name?
I don't actually remember her
Not
name.
talking about her weight, her occupation. Um,
I'm looking on Wikipedia. Dr. Gillian Taylor. I don't remember. Did they even say her name?
they did like once. It was like the guy that she worked with like said it, and that was it.
Oh.
Um, but yeah, because it's also funny too, like you know, like how like Kirk, they're coming back to eventually, to accept their careers are over and like face jail, and then they get thrown in this plot and they have to save the planet.
All the day's work.
Yeah, but um, and I also like the music for it too because it was a little more modern and like you definitely felt like you were in an '80s movie, especially when they first land. and they land in that park, and I thought those two trash guys, like, their reaction was perfect because I would have done the same thing. Like, when if a giant ship lands and people are just getting out of it, and it's like the middle of the night in a park, I'm just like, "Yep, nope, I'm out. Like, I'm done. I'm out. I'm going home."
Oh, yeah, 'cause,
Um,
yeah, people, like, if it was, like, a horror movie, they would, like, sprinted towards the ship and basically got themselves murdered.
yeah, yeah, like, yeah, some security guy in the park. "Hello? Anyone there?" Just gets
I
murdered.
must deal with the situation myself and not call for backup.
I'd be like, "Screw that. I'm getting paid, like, minimum wage to be here? No."
I'm not
Um,
dying for whatever this job is.
yeah. But yeah, and then they land, and it's like they don't waste any time. It's like everyone knows, like, Kirk Mead's like, all right, you guys are going to do this, you guys are going to do that, we're going to do this, and it's like, all right, immediately plots are, everyone knows what they got to do, and I think they did a good job, like, balancing out, like, giving everyone, like, fair, like, screen time. Obviously, Kirk and Spock got more because they're Kirk and Spock, but um, yeah, like, all the scenes that were in were great, especially like the first scene where they get into San Francisco, and you know it was just such a cool shot because it was such a funny shot because it's like they land, they get in there, and they're just in the middle of downtown San Francisco, and they're in their uniforms, and you wouldn't, like, it's funny how they look just so out of place, and they're all looking around like, and then they they just, they're like, all right, we got to follow, and then they, like, walk across the street, and the one guy curses at him like, "It's move out of the way, dumbass!" And, like, they all like. Kirk looks at them. They look at Kirk and goes, "Double dumbass to you." And they just keep walking.
I like his reaction too because, again, they're very more civilized, more proper, and then that's Kirk's way of trying to, like, curse and be in the times. It's
I
so,
know.
like, again, it sounds like so, like, you're, I don't know, like some high uptight person would say as, like, a response to try to fit in with the kids.
Yeah. But that, like, that's the kind of genius of the comedy is, like, they're from Earth, but yet they're out of place in it. But it's modern day Earth. Um, and I like how, like, Spock is like, he's still in that, like, Vulcan attire, like, the whole time. Um,
They didn't
but
make any,
yeah,
like,
so
Chinese jokes this time.
yeah, they were a little more progressive in the '80s. Um, but yeah, and
So
then
I was really, I like that point. Like, I think it was right after that scene when he got almost hit by the taxi, where they go to that store to get the money, and he goes, "I'll give you $100." Is that a lot?
And the best is, like, too, is like that he comes out after, like, with $100, and he's like dividing it up amongst the group. Because what it was, because it was paired off, like, Scotty and Bones had to, um, so they figure out they had to get Humpback Will. So Scotty and Bones had to go, get,
And Sulu
what was
actually, but he was kind of like shafted in the movie, but
yeah,
which kind of
yeah,
leads to our point in the episode before, about, like, how Sulu was, like, probably the most forgettable.
yeah, but he still had his little, like, 5 minutes with
Yeah.
the helicopter, being an expert on it. Um, but yeah, so Sulu had to go get the helicopter to carry over the plexiglass that
No,
uh,
transparent aluminum.
transparent aluminum tank that Scotty and Bones had to get. Meanwhile, they had to get, um, it was for the ship, right? They had to get, like, some form of, like nuclear radiation, because wasn't, like, the crystals, like, kind of
Yeah,
like,
they
they
said they were
went,
drained or draining or something.
yeah, so they had to get nuclear energy. Um, so Chekhov and Uhura went to, they had to go get nuclear vessels. I always love that. Like, that's just why I put the Russian accent. Not like vessel, like, trying to enunciate. It was just vessel.
What can you when was it the nuclear vessel?
Yeah. And then, uh, Spock and Kirk had to go get the humpback whales, which conveniently they landed in it. They were in San Francisco, where there's like a whale, like an aquarium, essentially holding two whales, Gracie and
George?
I forget them, George.
Yeah, I know their names. I don't know the doctor's name. The whale
Yeah, who
person.
cares? Who cares? But because that one scene too, like when they first are there and like they're all standing there at the street light, like after Kirk just gave them their assignments, and Kirk and Spock start walking, he looks around, he goes, and he looks, and they're just standing there, and he goes, "Well, don't look so out of place." And they're like, they just like they don't know what to do, like. And then you have Chekhov and Ahura just asking any person on the street where they can find nuclear vessels.
Well, especially Chekhov too, because he's the Russian. It's still during the Cold War.
And like they even ask like a cop too, and the cop just looks at him like, "What?"
Nuclear vessel.
But I also I like this too, that it was like fish out of water, because I thought it was a cool way to kind of integrate Spock back, because it was interesting because Spock is back, but it's not the old Spock. He still is accumulating his memories and still getting familiar like with everything. So he is even more fish out of water. Not only like with, Kirk, because he keeps calling him Captain, and Jim's like, you can just call me Jim.
Yeah, Admiral.
Um, and Yeah, so like I thought that was clever. And then when when they try to get on the bus and like they get kicked off, and Spock's like, "What do you mean by spare change?" Like everything. But then they eventually did get on the bus, and that I love that scene too, where that one guy who's like the stereotypical punk '80s rocker is just jamming out with the boombox, and then Kirk, Kirk's like, "Excuse me, do you mind turning that down?" Like everyone else on the bus is getting annoyed. Spock just looks at him, looks back at the guy, and then just knocks him out. And people just start clapping.
I was gonna say too, like a skipping hit. I like the scene when they're talking to the whale biologist, and she goes, "Would you guys like Italian?" And like both Kirk saying yes, and then Spock saying no, and Kirk trying to get him to say yes, and he keeps saying no, no. Yes,
and,
he's like, yes, I do not like Italian, and you will know I do not like Italian food.
and then Kirk with it, Shatner does a smirk. I love Italian.
Still
And then
get
he
the
just takes her,
wings.
and then he just takes her on a date. And that was so funny too. Like they just Spock just gets out of the car and just starts walking in the park. And Leia's like, "Where's he going?" He's like, "Yeah, he'll be fine."
Looks he
And
acted
then
so strangely. He was like, well, I guess that's kind of par for the course, right? With that
or,
weirdo.
or what was it, when after the aquarium scene, right? When which was great, when Spock, they were doing the tour and they're walking and Spock just disappears. And even at that moment of like when Kirk is like walking, he doesn't realize Spock is gone. And then, excuse me, then the group stops to look at the whales, and then there's that moment you see Kirk, and he's just looking around like where Spock is, and then his face when they see Spock in the tank with the whales.
Oh my god, yeah, I was like, oh my god. Of course, like he's in his
um,
underwear too, so they make it even
yeah.
funnier.
um, but and of course, like he goes in, he finds out that the whale Gracie's pregnant, which is even better, for repopulation. Um,
Also,
but
too, he was I think he was like, yeah, the whale was talking to me, and she was like, what are you talking about? The whale was talking to you.
yeah. um, and then too, like when the lady, like Spock and Kirk, after they're trying to figure out, like they leave the aquarium, they're trying to figure out like how to get the whales. Um, or no, when the whales are leaving, so they can go and transport them. Um, the lady pulls back up Gillian, and she's like, what's with him?" Like pointing at Spock, and then Kirk goes, say he tries to lie for him, but he messes up the lie. He goes, "Yeah, well, he was part of the hippie movie. He did a lot of LDS instead of saying LSD." um, yeah, and then there's another, and also too, the when Spock was like Kirk trying to blend in, and he kept cursing, and Spock was like, "What is with the language?"
Yeah, the colorful language.
Yeah, and so Kirk's like, "Well, back in these times, they were." Yeah, he said something like they were a little more abrasive and like more primitive.
Yeah, to get your point across, you have to basically curse.
um, and then there was um, the fun scene where Bones lies to that guy, the whoever the floor manager was at like Plexicore, um, to like get Scotty to be like a like he was some professor from Scotland, um, and
Like,
he's
this,
like,
how did you know about my meeting?
I traveled millions and millions, and then Bones goes thousands, thousands. That was a cool scene, and then the classic how Ahura and Chekhov got on the like USS
No, I thought no. Don't you listen
carrier.
when Scotty was like, "Hello, computer," talking to the mouse?
And then he's like, "Fine, I guess I'll just use the keyboard." And then like how I know you loved it, Craig, how fast he was typing.
Oh, yeah, it did not match at all what I think he'd be doing, but
Yeah. Um, and then yes, then Chekhov and Ahura were on the ship. Um,
the Enterprise, funny
there's
enough.
yeah, like that's a fun little nod.
It's funny too
Um,
because you've never seen Star Trek Enterprise, but the intro to that, they also had that Enterprise in the show's intro. Because like the intro was showing like all the different enterprises, like the famous enterprise throughout history, like the HMS Enterprise, that Enterprise. I forget the service number. Then yeah, like all the stuff that named Enterprise through all the years of human history.
yeah.
A little tie it all back.
See, those are cool little nods, not you know J.J. Abrams, taking out
Todd!
and yeah. Um, but and then um, yeah, so then like Kirk eventually gets the lady, to trust him and everything, and she finds out he wasn't lying about what he does. And they get everything together, and then the whales, they moved them in the middle of the night without telling the lady. Um, and then they have to track them down like in Alaska. Because even it's funny because even that lady, like she served a good, she like I thought she was like fine in the movie. Like she played her role very well. Like the like out of place, like she's second but curious with them
Well, it's
and
Kirk's charm. I
everything.
mean, if it was like Spock, she'd be like, "Okay, this guy's a weirdo. Don't go anywhere near me."
She's like, "Where are you really from?" Iowa. um, so like and then they get they finally they get the whales and everything, and then they get back in time with them, which how they were able to support whales, like
Okay, that wasn't like the best shot when they show like the whales and the tank. It was clearly like green screen.
yeah, um,
I wish
yeah,
I know that's how they probably would do it, but it just like the whales didn't even look like they fit in that tank. Like it wasn't green screened well or whatever.
yeah. There was barely you might have been able to fit one whale in, two humpbacks, like,
All that
but
water
hey,
too.
we'll let it slide.
No, not a big
Um,
deal.
Yeah. And then they get back in time. The lady Kirk was originally just gonna drop, let her be, like leave her there, like I can't bring you with me. And then she tricks him, hops on, gets on, the transporter, gets on the ship, and they get back in time. They drop the whales. The whales answer the call, and it all works out. But I did like the ending, like because it was funny, like and it was a bit of a kind of a cool arc, like because in the first two movies, the third one they didn't really touch on this, but the first two they did, like Kirk struggling with not being captain, like having to get commander, like get back to the ship. So I thought it was like nice that like they demote him of being admiral, but he can be captain
Well, yeah,
for
it's like
saving.
basically rewarding him.
Yeah, of it, and I thought the ending was cool too. Like, there wasn't like romance with the lady, um, like because I feel like that would have been a little like forced, like um if they, like to have that bit of a romance. Like there's a flirty kind of tension with it, but I thought they handled that well. Like where they just, she's now in their time and she's just gonna go be a science officer. Stay with the whales and everything, and that they had a nice little send off. But I did like um, the ending dialogue between like Spock and Sarek. Um, because like the one part where Sarek is like your acquaintances are of good character, and Spock just says they are my friends, and then like he's like, oh, I'm going back to Vulcan. Do you have a message for mother? And he's like, yes, tell her I feel fine. And then that was it. Like,
Oh, yeah, 'cause
but
that was from the beginning of the movie where he didn't understand the question, but now he got it.
yeah. So like they, there was cool, like as fun and light, you know, fun and lighthearted and comedically toned the movie was, it still was heartfelt and like sentimental, and they did a very good job of like wrapping it all together, um, and everything. Um, yeah, I really don't have any negatives like for the film.
Yeah, I mean, like, and all this stuff is more of just like nitpick, something I wouldn't like take all that seriously.
I guess the only negative is they couldn't have fit two humpback whales. I mean,
It's like, yeah, they probably couldn't, but based on the set they used, but whatever.
yeah, I guess Sulu could have gotten more time.
I don't know. It was a fun movie,
Yeah, it was.
enjoyable.
Yeah, it was a fun, heartfelt like movie for Star Trek. It definitely was a good like it felt like a movie form of like the fun episodes like we had mentioned uh from the original series, and it definitely was the best crew movie, where everyone had something to do, and it was cool, seeing the entire crew work together. Um and yeah, like we had touched on, like this movie hit with not having an antagonist, just the race against time, and they get put in a scenario where they're out of place, and but they work together and overcome it.
Yeah, it's, again, something that I feel like again what we said for the third one, like they could have been that extent. So
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure you've heard this saying where I guess the even Star Trek movies are the good ones and the odd ones are the bad one, right?
yeah.
I wonder, is this the one where they finally start the phrase, like the coin that phrase? Because obviously after two you can't really say that. Three, maybe you could say. I feel like this is the one. Is this the one where they finally coined that phrase?
I guess so,
I
but
have
I
no idea.
I,
I'm just speculating.
I think it definitely gets solidified after Undiscovered Country.
Yeah. I just don't know when they started saying that. I just know that it is a saying.
Yeah,
Like what movie was like, okay, this is. Again, I don't think the third one's all that bad. It's just.
the third one isn't the weakest. I hmm. No, third one's that it's not the weakest, but it's on the weaker side
I
of the
mean, only by
movies.
default because I like. I think two, four, and six are just actually good, much better. But
Yeah, it's really not a contest with them. Like the third one, more I place higher because I enjoyed it.
yeah,
Um, but I can't. I would. I can't argue that it's a better movie than two, four, or six. And as much as I like the third one, the fourth one, I place that one above that, and Wrath of Khan two as well,
the
and also Undiscovered
nuclear
Country.
whistles.
Yeah, I thought that was such a funny joke. Like they didn't even try to. Again, it was like the race against time, but they didn't even try to blend in at all. Like, and that makes the fish out of water humor better. Is like, they didn't even try to, because like in some of the older episodes, um like where they're time travel, like City on the Edge of Tomorrow, or um, and in the mobster one, all those episodes where they go back in time or they get put in this you know setting like that, they always blended in. They would change their clothes to blend in. Like this one, they just stayed as they were, and they're like, we're rolling with it. I
Well,
thought
because
that was
they
funny.
had like I remember they had said like they had like the ship's tailor, or they had somebody on the ship that would like actually give them wardrobes to blend in. I guess they didn't have that on the Bird of Prey.
And Kirk did it enough in the original series.
We at this point he's like in his 50s. Like, yeah. Granted, I think he
Well,
was like old too, but
yeah, I think he was like in his 60s or 50s by then.
yeah, Kirk was growing sideways, not physically.
I mean, they all did keep, except really Scotty, but like the rest of them kept in relatively good shape for their age.
Yeah, all of them lived pretty long too, at least well into their 80s. All of them, right? I think even
Because yeah, because I think like
actually
Undiscovered
Bones
Countries.
died at 79.
Yeah,
Sorry, what were you saying?
because Undiscovered Country and Generations is where you kind of started seeing Kirk's old age really kick in, like for his shape.
Yeah, I mean, it actually gets the belly too.
Yeah, but
So what were you saying before?
yeah, I don't. Um, but yeah, I don't really have. I don't know if I have anything else to really say regarding this one. I just enjoyed it so much. Um, was there any other like scenes or moments?
I was gonna say,
Um,
I think we skipped over this, but when Chekhov gets captured by the U.S. government on the Enterprise, and they're
oh
interrogating him,
yeah, yeah.
like,
And they like look at
can I
his
go now?
ID and everything.
I'm aboard
And
the
he like,
nuclear vessel.
yeah, he like fell.
Yeah, I don't like, and he's like basically dying, and yeah, Bones to the rescue.
Oh, that's that entire sequence, the hospital sequence when they hijacked Chekhov and like
Also, too, when they basically like hold the surgeon crew at like phaser point and lock him in a closet.
yeah. Oh, but that was such a great bone scene. When he like when they're trying to get him in. Well, they fake the girl. Like they that's the all right. So they did blend in that scene.
But they just
I
still
forgot.
scrubs. I mean, it's a little
Yeah.
easier to
So
do.
they throw scrubs on. They throw her on the gurney, and they pretend like she's whatever, and they're trying to use her to use that as an excuse to get into the same room as Chekhov so they can hijack him and get out of there. And um, Bones, that entire sequence was great for Bones because like when they're walking and then that old lady is like talking about like she's having like kidney failure,
Yeah, it's
and like Bones like my
dialysis.
like Bones like my God, the primitive medicine around here. He just gives her like these pills. He goes, take those, you'll feel better. And he just keeps walking, and then like when he's the security won't let him in, and he's arguing with them, and he like explains the condition she has, and like they let her in, and then Kirk goes, "What did you say that she had?" He goes, "Cramps." He just gave them the medical name for cramps, and then I love when they're leaving the hospital, like they're on the run from security, and then that lady's getting wheeled back by all these doctors, and she's like, "Oh, thank you, like I feel so much better." And like you hear the doctors like, "Yeah, her kidney she just grew another kidney."
Yeah, like when you like writing notes, like, oh my god, it's a miracle.
Yeah, that was another great scene too. Um,
Always needs some more. Bones needs more love.
yeah. That would have it would have been messed up, but if he just goes over to Chekhov, can you help him, Bones? He's dead, Jim.
uh, that would be funny. but also kind of messed up. Yeah, he's dead, Jim. Just leave bones in
I'm,
Chekhov's
or
body.
maybe if they did to anyone, maybe like Sulu. But
Yeah, I mean,
then,
I don't, no one really miss him. Again, like I really forget he's in the movies sometimes.
yeah, because he was with like because his chopper scene wasn't that long. It was just him talking to the guy about the chopper. Like it was like this, you know, uh, it was like someone talking to someone about like this old, cool car. Um, and then he gets the chopper, and then he brings it over to the ship.
Because I'm thinking too, like in the third one, he just flips that big guy over, called him tiny. Like, he doesn't really do anything else after that.
Yeah,
Nothing like even like the first one doesn't really do anything. The second doesn't really do anything. That's why like he's the Star Trek guy. Like I really forget he's in these movies.
yeah. Because that's what I mean. Is like Chekhov. Like when Chekhov came on season 2, he was part of the steady. He was more part of the cast than Sulu.
And again, it's not like I have any hatred for the guy. It's just I find it odd when he is like this is what he's known for. I'm like, well, I've seen it, and I kind of forget he's in it.
Yeah, that's more of like you
Or a
should have
public perception
capitalized
of
and
things.
yeah, because he makes it like I guess on the we already touched on it in the last episode, but like when he talks about like his feud with Kirk, like it's not like Nimoy having a feud with Shatner and talking about being robbed of scenes and stuff like because Spock like that you would have a case there because Spock is number two. I mean he's essentially like one they're one A and one B, but um
Or yeah, like
I
even
don't
like
know.
you get him, Spock, and Bone. Like they're the main guys. Scotty's like the
Yeah,
unofficial fourth, and then like
yeah,
Uhura who like just spouts stuff, and then Chekhov is like the comedic guy with the funny accent.
yeah. Wessel. It has B's and W's.
Did I see this in the last episode? But he said he got his accent from his parents who were Russian.
Really?
Yeah, because like it's funny. I've showed like people have heard like I've heard him speaking. I think it's like he's just making up an accent. Like, well, apparently he says it's based off people he knows.
Hmm.
Because I kind of thought the same thing too. Like, is he? I mean, usually when I hear a Russian accent, they usually hear like you know the more stereotypical one, not his accent.
Yeah. Hmm. I didn't know that.
The more you know.
Yeah, because his name is Walter Koenig, right?
Oh yeah, I looked it up. But like, I
Koenig,
think his name was
Koenig.
shortened from Königsberg. What I remember reading.
Sounds like a town.
It is a town. It used to be in Prussia, but
Really?
now it's owned by the Russians. Actually, funny enough, it was a Prussian town.
Hmm. So what, is he? Was he like first? Is he first gen? Like for in like as an American for his family?
That I don't remember.
Because if his parents would have the accent, like he probably
I mean,
because
probably.
he yeah. But anyway, um, any any final thoughts on the voyage home?
Mm, I think I've said my piece. I mean, again, it was a good movie, very enjoyable. Liked it a lot.
Yeah, yeah. This definitely this is one of my favorites. My probably tied for my favorite with an undiscovered country, but for different reasons.
Yeah.
Because this definitely was the most lighthearted of all the movies. Um, it's kind of funny because yeah, I guess with the even ones, I guess after six they were like, yeah, we don't want to have a disappointing one after this one, because next episode when we talk about the Final Frontier, the fifth one, and the Undiscovered Country, the sixth one. Um, Definitely follows that formula. Um, but yeah, I've said my piece too. I love this movie. One of my favorite Star Treks. Definitely the most complete in the sense of crew usage and the crew working together, but not just a fun movie, but also I think a well written movie in in all aspects, in terms of executing comedy, plot, and pacing, all very well done um, for for a movie. I think too. I think with this one and like Undiscovered Country and Wrath of Khan, I don't think you have to be a Star Trek fan to enjoy them, and I think that's why like they're such good movies. Like they're such strong movies because they're overall just good movies that you don't have to be a fan to enjoy them.
Yeah.
Especially
I
like especially this one. Like it's lighthearted. Like you can just go and enjoy it for like almost like just a comedy movie.
I was actually going to add one more thing. This wasn't in the movie, but I saw this on the Wikipedia, and I am so glad they did not include this. They said their original plan for Savick was that she was going to be pregnant with Spock's child after, I guess, helping with Pon farr in the third one. And I'm like, that's a horrible idea. Would you ever include that? Like, that's so weird.
Yeah,
Like, thank God they cut.
yeah, yeah. I'm glad they kind of like they put closure to her character and just she stayed on Vulcan and that's that.
Plus, it's about the
And
crew. It's not really, I mean, not really about her. Don't
yeah,
be selfish.
and and I'm glad too. Like it's kind of messed up, but not in terms of like because it was kind of poorly executed. Was they didn't address David,
Yeah, but yeah, like,
his death.
what more would you really say, though, right? I mean, he's dead.
Well, yeah. I mean, maybe they could have had Kirk being a little emotional about it in the beginning, but I think it was better because, again, if it was executed properly, they could have touched on it. But I think they realized, like, yeah, it kind of was unnecessary. Just like, all right, just move on.
I mean, he barely cared in the third one. Why do you think he's going to care in the fourth one?
Yeah. Honestly, if anything, they should have just kept David alive, and him and Savick could have had a relationship and stayed on Vulcan. And then Kirk could have said goodbye. I got to go back and face the face my consequences, and that's it. And then he doesn't die, but him and Savick, they're done. No more, no more. They're not overused, and tie a nice bow on it. I think that would have been better, and it wouldn't have taken anything away from this film. It actually would have been a nice sentimental moment in the beginning, like when Spock is talking with his mother, Kirk is saying goodbye to his son, and then they're back, and then they're off. Because then it could have played into like Kirk as a character. He can't leave the ship. It would have been a nice little, another Kirk nuance, like he loves his son, he doesn't regret it or anything like that. He made peace with it, and but his true love is for the ship and and his crew, and then they carry on with their journey. I think that would have been better. But
Yeah.
what do I know? I'm not J.J. Abrams. I'm not giving hundreds of $1 million to ruin a franchise in two movies.
I saw something, a bit of a tangent, but I saw something. I think he was hired by DC to produce some like junk, and he never delivered. I think he just took some money and ran off. Let me just double check this because I want to make sure I'm getting this right. I don't want him to sue me. Yeah, I don't think he ever. Yeah, he never made anything. Yeah, he was given this contract and never made anything. He signed a 5-year, $250 million deal, and I don't think he made a single thing for them.
Wow. And he didn't have to pay it back? Or like,
Oh, I don't know. He just robbed DC. God, he's the worst. I can only imagine what kind of disgusting character is gonna crawl out of the sewers after this new strike.
Yeah.
Because I think he rose to prominence after the strike in '08. We're still seven. The Writers Guild strike.
Yeah, yeah. Isn't there another one ongoing right now?
Yeah.
Colin would know more about that if he
Well,
was
that's why he's
here.
not here. He's striking. He doesn't want to work with us right
Ah, yes.
now.
The grueling hours we make him do after he subjects us to like the worst films humanity has to offer. But yeah, yeah, I think. Um, but yeah, so 3 and 4 in summary. Three is it's an enjoyable Star Trek film. Overall, it's an okay movie, but being a Star Trek film and the characters, it's more enjoyable than probably the movie should have been. Um, and 4 is just it's just good. It's just good, clean family fun, eh, Cotton? Anyway, yeah. So tune in for next episode when we discuss the concluding two films of the original series film franchise with Star Trek Five, The Final Frontier, and Star Trek Six, The Undiscovered Country. I have been Daniel,
I've been Craig.
and if anyone cares of our 5 viewers, leave us a comment. What was your favorite Star Trek? What don't you like about Colin? You could, we encourage that. Um, but
I'll log into my alt
yeah,
account to let you know what I don't like about him.
yeah, actually, maybe that's an episode.
What we don't like about Colin.
Yeah. All right.
See ya!